So guys, welcome back to the beginner's guide to building muscle. In the first video, I spoke to you about the considerations when it comes to training, how to go about our programming, how to go about getting the most effective stimulus when it comes to obviously what we're doing in the gym. Now in this video, I'm going to speak a little bit more and delve into the nutrition side of things. So obviously nutrition is a very, very important element when it comes to building muscle. People will throw ratios at you and say, you know, it's 30% this, 20% this. Ultimately, if you're serious about developing your physique and you're serious about gaining tissue, you need to be given 100% of everything. So, you know, there's no magic formula when it comes to how much effort you should be putting into different aspects of you know, the building blocks of gaining tissue. But ultimately, you want to try and put everything you can into all three of these key principles. So, in today's episode, I'm going to talk to you about nutritional considerations when building muscle. So we've already covered the training programming considerations. So let's assume that we've nailed that. To coincide with that now, we need to ensure that our nutrition is on point. And one of the most fundamental things about gaining tissue is providing your body with an energy surplus. And basically what that means is you're consuming more food, more energy than you're actually utilizing, than your body is burning off, if you like. The differentiations with calorie intake are huge between person to person. That's why one of the most common questions I'll get, you know, as a coach is, what calories do I need? Before I even know anything about this client, and that's impossible. This person, and that's impossible to say because everyone is different in terms of what their body needs. So the most important thing that you want to try and find is your maintenance. Now I say that with inverted commas because maintenance doesn't really exist. You know, it's very different on a day-to-day basis in terms of how many calories your body's going to need. However, what we need to try and find is a caloric intake that your body is going to sit on the same body weight, the same body mass with that caloric intake. So let's say, for example, that you stick yourself on 2,000 calories and you monitor your obviously weight for the next 2 weeks on that 2,000 calories. Within the next 2 weeks, your body weight stays exactly the same. Let's just say for the sake of making this easy, your body weight stays exactly the same, 80 kilos, for example. We now know that your body needs roughly 2,000 calories for what you do on a day-to-day basis to basically survive, to function and to maintain your overall body mass and your overall body composition. If we're now trying to build on that, we're trying to build tissue, we need to provide that surplus. So we would then go up maybe 200 calories, you know, not a substantial jump, 200 calorie surplus, and then monitor weight from there. Ideally, when we're trying to build tissue, we don't want to be gaining vast amounts of weight each week, you know, because realistically, how much tissue we're going to gain, you know, it's not going to be a huge amount, you know, a pound, 2 pounds per week. So if you're putting on 2 kilos every week, you know, a large proportion of that is going to be body fat. And when we think of the longevity of a push-up or a gaining phase or a muscle building phase, you know, we want to try and protect that longevity, and we want to ensure that, you know, we still have plenty of cards to play and we're not running out of steam 2 months down the line because we've, you know, completely rinsed all of our receptors and we're in a spot where our body just doesn't want to gain tissue. So we realistically only really want to be going up maybe 500 grams to a pound per week is a very good amount. And obviously this is going to be very different to your level of expertise. You know, if you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced lifter, obviously a beginner lifter potentially lean towards gaining weight at a slightly faster rate. Whereas, you know, an advanced lifter, you don't want to be gaining 2 pounds a week because, you know that's not going to be muscle tissue. Now, once we find that caloric surplus, we need to break it down into obviously macronutrients. So with regards to macronutrients, you know, not one macro is more important than the other. You know, they all have their individual role. So protein for protein synthesis, exactly what it says in the tin. That's going to help you build damaged tissue that we're damaging in the gym. With regards to carbohydrates, they're going to give you intramuscular fullness. They're going to give you glycogen transported into the muscle belly, which is going to help you train. You know, it's going to help you with obviously your liver glycogen. It's going to help you, you know, from a cognitive perspective. So there's lots of So there's lots of different functions for carbohydrates. You know, and ultimately we'll delve into those in a moment. But these are going to be very, very pivotal for your training performance. And then with fats often get a bad name because they're called fat, but eating fats is not going to make you fat. You know, that's another video in itself, but ultimately we need dietary fats to function. Your body can't survive without fats. When it comes to protein intake, I would always recommend 1 gram, maximum 1.5 gram per pound of body weight. So if you're 200 pounds, 200 grams of protein. For a more muscled individual, I would lean towards the 1.5, but no more than that. You know, any kind of huge surplus of protein intake that your body cannot use will just result in obviously excreting and not actually being utilized. So it's going to be a waste of money. Protein is not cheap. When it comes to protein sources, mix your proteins up, just the same way you would mix up any other macronutrients. Ideally, we want to lean towards good quality lean sources of protein. So things such as chicken, things such as white fish, oily fish is fine. Yes, it's not lean, but it's a good dietary fat. Things such as a whey protein, you know, things such as turkey mince, beef mince. These are all good quality sources of protein. And obviously we're leaning much more towards plant-based options if you're a vegan or if you're a vegetarian. So that's protein covered. Keep protein pretty much spaced out throughout the day. You want to, for example, if you're consuming 200 grams of protein and you're having 5 meals, I've now set myself up to do some quick maths on video, then you're going to want to consume 40, 80, 120, roughly 40 to 45 grams of protein per meal. You wouldn't want to have a big bolus of 70 grams and then 20 grams in one meal, because we have to think from a digestion perspective, another video, we want to be putting our body, or our gut, should I say, in a position where it can break down protein. Protein is a hard macronutrient for your body to ingest. If we want to ensure that we're getting a good amount of the remainder of our calories are from carbs and fats, and a good portion is from carbs. Now, whether you lean more towards carbs or fats is going to be, again, person dependent, and your ability to manage each macronutrient. So some people are going to be more favored for carbohydrates if they can manage lots of carbohydrates when it comes down to their body's pancreatic response and ability to manage glycogen intramuscular, and that comes down to, again, endocrinology, with insulin being the main kind of receptor here. That individual would lean towards funneling in carbs and potentially slightly lower fats, whereas someone who is predisposed maybe not to have the best tendency with managing carbohydrates, that's where you would potentially want to lean more towards fats. And again, it's person dependent, so you know there's nothing wrong with a 50-50 split, but these are all things that you'll kind of figure out and you'll edge your own way into as you progress through your muscle building phase. With carbohydrates, we want to try and space them out evenly, but ingest a large bolus around the training perimeter. Reason for that is going to help keep you full for your training. The carbs you eat pre-training are not going to fuel you for that training session, but ultimately it's going to ensure that we're placing, you know, a good bolus of carbohydrates around that training window and giving your body the best chance for it to be utilized, because that's when the majority of energy is going to be consumed within that kind of proximity. Carb sources, in the beginning of, again, person dependent, but in the beginning of the gaining phase, I would try and lean towards having the majority of your carbs wholesome sources. So things such as potato, things such as rice, things such as oats, rice cakes, quinoa, things like that, because they're going to be the best carbohydrate sources for your body to digest, to utilize as energy, to store intramuscular, and they're going to have the least response when it comes to insulin production having to shuttle into the muscle bellies. When we kind of start tapping into higher GI foods such as sugars and things like that, we're going to have to, you know, get a higher demand of insulin to actually put that intramuscular, and we're going to start rinsing that response very, very quickly. When you start getting later on in the gaining phase, that's when it's going to be more beneficial to start trickling in some sugars and some more palatable meals, such as cereal, such as jams, bagels, more fruits, things like that. Because ultimately they're easier to eat, they're more palatable, they're more satiating, and when your appetite just starts to slow down, but you need to keep getting food in, these sort of foods are going to play a very, very influential part in being able to actually keep eating the food, you know, that your body demands to grow. So carbohydrates, when it comes to fats, so fats ideally away from that training perimeter. Fats are going to be a little bit slower in the digestive system, and ultimately we want to ensure that we're getting a good kind of influx of energy with those remaining meals. So sort of say you train between meal 3 and 4, maybe meal 1 and 2, a nice big influx of fats, and then that last meal of the day, another big influx of fats. When it comes to fats, again, fats get a bad name. Not all fats are bad. A lot of fats are very, very good, very influential for the endocrine system and the body's ability to function cognitively. When it comes to fats, we want to try and make sure the majority of our fats are coming from monounsaturated, polyunsaturated. We don't really want to be consuming trans fats and things like that, or over saturated fats. Obviously a small amount of them is fine, but we want to kind of make sure that we're having fats which we know are going to support what we're trying to do here from a digestion perspective. So fats such as nuts, avocado, nut butters, oily fish, all these sort of things are going to complement us very well. So that's macronutrients covered. Obviously we're eating in a caloric surplus. You've found your protein intake and spread it out throughout the day. You've got your carbs placed around your training perimeter. You've got your fats away from the training perimeter, and you're slowly, steadily increasing weight. When it comes to the longevity of the push or a gaining phase, what we need to understand is that there will be a point of not a point of no return, but there will be a point of where your body starts to slow down the mechanisms, with regards to gaining tissue, with regards to that recovery process, ingesting the food you're eating, shuttling carbs into muscle tissue. That process will ever so slowly start to slow down as you get heavier, as body fat accumulates, as body composition starts to deteriorate. And obviously that's when it's kind of going to be optimal to hit a recomposition phase, where you would just restart everything and get your body ready to push up again. So for the sake of a gaining phase, for the sake of trying to gain for a good period of time, we want to ensure that we go slow and steady with the weight increases, and ultimately we want to enjoy what we're eating. So for that reason, I would always place a huge bias on wanting to try and make your food enjoyable to eat. So take your time with making foods inventive. I see a lot of people just sticking to very, very plain food sources with no flavorings and no inventiveness, because it's hardcore. When ultimately, if you lose the ability to eat because your appetite is shot, you lose the ability to grow. The most important thing is to be able to keep consuming in a caloric surplus. And at the beginning of the gaining phase, that's going to be relatively easy because your appetite should be high if you put the groundwork in first. However, when you get 6, 9, 12 months down the line and you're consuming, double or even triple the amount of calories you was on when you started, you may find that continuing to eat these same boring plain foods is pretty difficult. So that's where it's important to make sure that you're enjoying what you're eating. So that's food covered, guys. That's the nutritional side of things. When it comes to supplementation, that is another video that I will certainly cover. But those are the fundamentals. Obviously, there's plenty of other rabbit holes that we can go down and start speaking about, but those are separate videos in themselves. When it comes to the fundamentals of building tissue, if we can kind of adhere to these guidelines and these principles, we're going to have a pretty good chance of gaining some tissue, and that's what we all want. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one today. As always, I've enjoyed ranting at you. If you've anyone got any questions, please fill the comment section. If you like the video, give us one of them. And if you like the content, subscribe to the channel. Looking forward to bringing you loads more videos. So I will see you in the next one.